Here we go, fantasy fanatics. It's playoff season, baby, and it's time to get extra serious about waiver wire targets. On the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, all of this week's must-adds, plus big-time bets broken down. Let's tap in and get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The push to the top of the fantasy hockey realm. We're almost there, my friends. So thank you for joining us once again for a Monday waiver wire special of your daily 30-minute source for fantasy hockey, NHL news, and betting breakdowns. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is just about showing you guys love. It's not brought to you by anybody other than me and your boy, Steele Rodin. Thank you for joining us. Waiver Wire Week 23, Steele, I believe. I don't know how we got here. It's been a long season. So kudos to all of the GMs out there with their foot on the gas still. Something tells me if you've been paying attention, tapped into the pod, finger on the pulse, all the things we like to say, you're probably in good shape. I'm intrigued to get to our bets, my friend, but I'm also intrigued to hear who you're looking at and why for a very critical week.
Look, there's a lot of potential in the next 7 days. 12 teams have a 4-game schedule in the next week. So we got to make the most out of all our roster spots out there. And now is the time to do so. If you haven't already been in the playoffs, they start this week. They might have started last week for a few leagues out there, but it's go time, playoff time. And there's a lot of good teams out there. Like I said, there's 12 teams that have a really good schedule, 4 games over the next 7 days. I'm really strictly looking at this Atlantic division right now. 3 teams, 2 battling for a playoff spot. And let's start with the Montreal Canadiens. They have a really good schedule this week. They have a really tough schedule this week, but they're playing for a lot. Obviously holding on to that second wild card spot. They got 4 or 5 teams nipping at their heels right now. 4 games on the road: St. Louis Blues, Philadelphia Flyers, Carolina Hurricanes, and the Florida Panthers. Probably the toughest schedule out here on the board. But like I said, they are playing for a lot, and the team is rising to these standards that the fans, the clubs, and themselves are holding them to. And I still think there's a lot of potential and value with these players right here. Patrick Laine, rostered at 41%. He's got 6 points in his last 4 games. You can go up and down the lineup. Jake Evans, who we've spoken about. Arbor Xhekaj, if you're looking for a banger league beauty for penalty minutes and hits and blocks. Down the line at Brendan Gallagher, the beating heart, the soul of the team. He's out there, 1% rostered. He shoots the puck a ton. He lays the body out.
Talking about Gallagher a lot lately, Steele. Yeah. Here we go.
4 points in his last 3 games, so he's really been getting after it as well. 5 points in his last 3 games. Penalty minute shots, hits from time to time as well. I think there's a ton of value with the Montreal Canadiens right now, and I don't know why. I'm getting this weird feeling that they can kind of go on a Cinderella story, deep playoff run like we saw in the 2021 season. So they're looking really good right now. I know they've lost 2 in a row in overtime or extended regulation, but 75 points, second wild card spot. Martin St. Louis got this team locked in right now, and their players up and down the lineup. It's not just the top 6. The bottom 6 are contributing as well. So I think there's a lot of value, even though they do have a pretty tough schedule opponent-wise in the next week.
5-1-4 in their last 10 games. If they can even turn a couple of these shootout OT losses into wins, they might be looking at a whole different story here, but that's the nature of this stretch of the schedule. That was a beauty of a tilt on Saturday night between Colorado and Montreal. The building was absolutely buzzing. It goes down to a shootout. Brock Nelson wins it. I don't know if you actually saw that Drouin was Jared Bednar's pick. And Drouin says, no, Nelson's move is going to beat him. Today. And Nelson's move beats him. This is the time of year to tap in, my friends, because whether your team's in it or not, this is hockey season. So I really appreciate you bringing up the Montreal Canadiens because they're red hot. Everything you said holds true. Very quickly, honorable mention to all these teams that you mentioned with 4 games, Utah, Buffalo, Islanders, Devils, Leafs, Canucks, Habs, Sens, Stars, Red Wings, Wild, and Kings. If you're having trouble picking and you don't like what Steele and I are throwing out there, I highly implore you to just go by the most games option. However, JJ Paterka, 3 points in his last 3 games, Steele, 81 on Fantrax, owned, not out there. But ESPN and Yahoo, he's out there, 22 goals. This guy's a shooter. You need some offensive love. I say you look squarely at JJ Paterka, but also at Matt Coronado. I said it. We weren't even talking about waiver wire. I said I think that kid's game the other night, a couple of days ago, is going to break him out of that slump he was in. This guy can shoot, Steele, and look at what he's done. 4 more goals since we've talked about him. So he's got to fall into this mode. The Calgary Flames are playing pretty good puck, and that second line with Huberdeau, and I believe it's I forget who else he's playing with on the second line, but I like it, and I want him to continue to do what he does and shoot that puck. Calgary this week, wanted to bring that up. Bit of a mixed bag, Stars, Kraken, and Oilers, but he is out there. And in terms of offensive options that I love right now, Coronado's at the top of the list.
Yeah, he played tremendous. I had a big parlay going over the weekend. Flames take down the Islanders. He was a big contributor in that one. I was going to save the Buffalo Sabres for later, but you promptly brought up JJ Paterka, who I also have on this list with a few other players of this organization. When you look at this team right now, obviously they're not playing for much other than their pride and dignity at this point in the season. Nevertheless, they've got 4 games this week, and it's actually a little bit of an easier schedule than I just mentioned with the Montreal Canadiens. They take on the Ottawa Senators, Pittsburgh Penguins, Philadelphia Flyers, and the Washington Capitals. So somewhat of an advantageous schedule. And like you said, JJ Paterka, who's got a 3-game goal streak going right now, 21 goals, 32 points, shoots the puck a lot, 46% rostered right now. Again, you can go up and down this organization. Bowen Byram, Jason Zucker, Ryan McLeod. I know I mentioned them last week. It sounds like a broken record, but this is what we're doing right now because of the schedule at the season. We got to reiterate some of these points and nail the point home. Buffalo Sabres, Montreal Canadiens, like you said, Matt Coronado, all really good schedules this week, and also some of them on fire offensively.
Schedule getting ever more enticing as we push towards the playoffs. This is going to be interesting, Steele, fantasy or otherwise. We've got some more targets to talk about. I believe we've got a 5-game betting board on tap for tonight. Make sure you guys stay tapped into the pod, tuned in all week. We'll be dropping episodes 7 a.m. in the morning, Monday through Friday, like we always do. However, today's episode is brought to you by our delicious friends at Wonderful Pistachios. If you're looking for a snack that's delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and those better for you unsaturated fats. Personally, the no-shell variety, snacking at the desk, on a roadie, or here losing my voice, I still hit the no-shell variety from Wonderful Pistachios. Get snacking and cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more today. Grab yourself a bag.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day, Monday through Friday. 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. We appreciate all that love and support you show us throughout this entire season. To everyone who is a part of our fantasy hockey listener leagues, casual and competitive, thank you so much. For everyone that reached out as well. Thank you so much for all of that. Waiver Wire Mondays, week 23. Playoffs are starting in our fantasy hockey leagues on Yahoo. I've already started and the 3 other ones that I'm in, but playoffs are in. I know you're waiting for the results on Sunday. We're recording on Sunday. We're waiting for the results.
Down to the wire, baby.
Down to the wire, might squeeze in. So if you do get in the playoffs, besides Matt Coronado, some of the guys we already mentioned, who are you looking at if you're up there in next week?
Yeah, for sure. And I would start immediately looking ahead to the next couple of weeks of schedule. And right now, I want one of those players that can perhaps blow up with a bunch of hits, maybe like a 5 or 10 penalty minute type night, but also still bring me some offensive value. And I look at Jake Neighbors as that perfect kind of player who plays with enough edge that, like, I'm not saying he's reckless, Steele. He's got 50 penalty minutes this year, 150 hits, and he's still right there at the 20 goal mark. And over his last 5 games, he has 5 points. He's got a whole bunch of hits, and he's playing on the top line in St. Louis. And as much as you know, I've been quite clear about me not buying into St. Louis overall. They're still hanging in there. I'm going to talk about one more St. Louis Blue. Habs, Preds, Avs, mixed bag. But in terms of offense, I actually like their chances there against those 3 teams. So Jake Neighbors, 27 on Yahoo, 20 on ESPN, 60 on Fantrax. So he should be out there for you. And I just like this kid's game. All those things add together to Jake Neighbors, a really good, low risk, potentially high reward situation here down the stretch this last week.
Look, they've battled their way into a playoff spot. I know I've talked about Dylan Holloway a lot this season as well. Braden Shen's been getting after it recently. 5-game win streak for the St. Louis Blues.
Good timing.
Good timing indeed. 7-2-1. It's getting pretty tight right now, actually, in the Western. Not as tight as the Eastern, but this Western Conference race. St. Louis Blues, 79 points. Flames, 77. Canucks, 76. And the Utah Hockey Club at 75. It's going to come down to the wire in both conferences.
Yep.
Dylan Holloway, Jake Neighbors, those are good options. I know Dylan Holloway is pretty rostered out there above 70%, but Jake Neighbors is a very good option.
Thank you.
The have a very good week, even with only 3 games on the schedule. Montreal Canadiens, Nashville Predators, and Colorado Avalanche. I like the fact you're bringing up Jake Neighbors. Good option right there. Like I said, I'm focusing strictly on this Atlantic division. Not saying that there's not a lot of value out there, because there's, like we said, there's 12 teams who have 4 games this upcoming week. But the Ottawa Senators, for me, again, another team with a lot on the line right now. It's not even just a wild card spot. They still have a chance of getting 3rd in the Atlantic division, 6 points back of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And when I look at this team right now, they're firing on all cylinders. I know they're trying to get Fabian Zetterlund going. He's projected to be on the top line moving forward, at least for the next little bit. But there's still a lot of options with this team. Claude Giroux, 54%. Shoots the puck decently on the first power play unit. He's got 6 points in his last 7 games. A very dangerous third line with Ridley Gregg and Shane Pinto.
I agree.
Like I said, Zetterlund hasn't really done, in fact, he hasn't done anything since arriving in Ottawa from the trade deadline. But they're trying to get him going. We know he's a skilled player. He's rostered at 20% right now. Dylan Cousins, we've mentioned, 41% rostered. He's found some chemistry. Shane Pinto, Ridley Gregg, a lot of good options here from the Ottawa Senators. And like I said, they've got 4 games this week: Buffalo Sabres, Detroit Red Wings, Columbus Blue Jackets, and Pittsburgh Penguins. That is probably the easiest schedule you're going to find over the next 7 days from any team out there. They've got 4 games. I think there's a ton of value to be had with this Senators club right now, because like I said, a lot on the line. They're playing really good hockey. Let me just pull up the record real quick. Ottawa Senators are 7-2-1 in their last 10 games. So like with the Montreal Canadiens that I said earlier, they're fighting for a playoff spot, and everyone has to contribute. All of those guys in the bottom 6 are doing so right now.
In this sport, Steele, at this time of the season, there are a number of players playing through injury. It's just a fact. That's what hockey players do. It's not really about who's in or who's out. It's when whoever is in, how healthy are they? How effective are they? Brady Tkachuk seems to be battling that hip. He took a little bit of a bump Saturday. He went to the bench. He came back. He played well. They're fighting it. Matthews, some of these major players on Canadian teams are all kind of dealing with stuff. And to me, when I see Tkachuk battling it, I'm not going to speculate at all. But if he misses any time down the stretch, takes another knock or whatever, this team's swagger, its confidence, it's everything up front runs through Tkachuk. So I think they're at a bit of like this kind of tipping point that they got to keep the pedal down here, because ideally maybe you get a little bit of a cushion and you give him a game or 2 to rest up. I just see these injury situations starting to pop up, and you got to keep your eye on it. So wanted to highlight it, wanted to throw out Capo Caco just quickly because he looked so good against the Edmonton Oilers. Because I'm a degenerate, I was up late. I watched that entire game. 5-4. Edmonton squeaked it out for me on the money line, but great game, and he looked sensational. And when I see the finish that he had, no pun intended, in those 2 goals that he scored, you see the flashes of why he was such a high draft pick, second overall. However, going into that game, 1 goal in the previous 4, bit of a deeper cut. Wanted to throw Kako out there because he did look good, and I could see him having a big week. Flames, Oilers, Stars, mixed bag. He gets some love. I got a goaltender I want to talk about at the very end, but Mason McTavish, Bruins, Rangers, and Leafs for the Ducks this week. Mason McTavish is an assist machine, and he plays with an edge. 36 penalty minutes, up to 43 points on the season, including 6 in his last 5 games. I like what the Ducks got going on the low end of things. And right now, this is a guy playing with confidence, finding his teammates, and no one's talking about him, Steele. Shots on net, getting there. Penalty minutes, also there. Good option for some offensive love, Mason McTavish. In terms of ownership, before I turn it over to you, 25 Yahoo, 15 ESPN, 67 on Fantrax. So we should be out there. Like that option for you if you need, especially some love in that assist category. Mason McTavish is your guy.
Always a good option if you need help in that category. And I don't really have any more specific players right now. Again, I was focusing strictly on that Atlantic divisions. All 4 of those guys, 3 of those teams I mentioned have 4 games up this week. I think another good option maybe would be looking at the New Jersey Devils as well. Another team with 4 games on the schedule, more advantageous games this next 7 days as well. Vancouver, Chicago, Winnipeg, and Minnesota. They need all their guys to step up right now. I'm not saying they're going to drop out of a playoff spot. Well, without Jack Hughes, without Dougie Hamilton in the lineup right now, you really need to rely on the bottom 6. So Stefan Nason, a guy who has been productive. He slowed down, obviously, the last month or so, but 19 goals, 17 assists. He throws the body around. He shoots the puck a lot. 52 penalty minutes. A guy that is on the power play from time to time as well. Dawson Mercer, Paul Cotter, Luke Hughes, who we've mentioned before throughout the entire season. I think there's still some value to be had. Again, you need all these guys stepping up. So a lot of teams, like we said, 12 teams, 4 games this week.
I don't want to count the Devils out of it. I don't know if you saw those comments from Sheldon Keefe. There's obviously some people hot under the collar in the franchise in New Jersey right now. I'm going to talk about them after the break, Steele. So thank you for teasing this up, because I actually think that they do have more than enough pieces to respond, even with the injuries that they've been handed this year. Don't want to count them out quickly, though. Joel Hofer is a goaltender that we haven't really spoken about very much at all. And he is quietly playing very good hockey. And Jordan Binnington, since the Four Nations face-off, has really not. Hofer, over his last 5 games, Steele, 3-0-1, a 946 save percentage. And look, I don't know what this week holds with the Habs, Preds, and Avs for the Blues in terms of, like, I could still see Binnington getting 2 of those 3 starts. But let's say he plays poorly in one, I might see Hofer getting a little bit more of the run out down the stretch here, because this is playoff push time, baby. There's no favoring a guy who makes more money. Hofer's playing better. He's going to be the guy in there. So that might be a sneaky little thing you can swing in and get some good goalie love. 40% Fantrax, 10 in Yahoo, and 4 on ESPN. I thought Joel Hofer needed a little bit of love because nobody's talking about him.
That's what Mondays are for, showing the love for the guys who are hot right now. Waiver wire must-adds for this next week. Playoff time in the fantasy hockey realm. When we come back after the break, big-time bets, maybe 1 or 2 final targets for this week. However, this episode is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. And welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Monday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Hit that subscribe button, the follow button, share with your friends and family out there. It really does mean the world to us.
Yep.
Still getting to 2,000 subscribers. All of that help means the world.
We're pushing, baby. We're pushing.
We're pushing. We need your help to get there. So make sure you do that for us. It really does mean the world for us to see that support and love from all of you out there. Big time bets. You have one last player you want to mention before we get over to Monday's betting board.
I'm ready to go with bets, pal. And if you're good, this was a pretty tricky board for me. So I'm going to spit picks. I'm going to spit my picks out quick. What I've seen from the Columbus Blue Jackets tells me it's fade o'clock big time. And I know the New York Islanders are your dark horse team, so I don't think I need to sell you too much here. Also, about this, 8-1-1, the New York Islanders against Columbus in their last 10 games. So let's keep it neat and tidy and simple and get this loot, Steele. Islanders, money line, first pick. New Jersey at home. We just talked about them. The Vancouver Canucks have been a team for me that I bet on them to win. They lose. I bet against them, and they look like they're ready for the Stanley Cup. They have dropped 3 of their last 4 and finally starting to look like the team that I've been saying they are for most of the season, a bunch of fugazis. New Jersey in their last 10 against Vancouver, as my voice goes, 8-2-0. Give me the Devils on the money line. And another player that Steele, I know I haven't given enough love this year. Jesper Bratt has 81 points and 61 of them are assists.
Yeah.
In 12 games against the Canucks, he has 7 assists. Hit me with my lock of the night. Jesper Bratt, anytime assist, keeping it simple. Let's get after it.
I love those bets. I'm also there with you. You did not have to sell me on this one. Islanders on the money line against the Columbus Blue Jackets. I wish I wasn't saying it, but we do have to fade these Blue Jackets at this point in the season. They're sliding fast. Islanders, they've picked up steam, especially at home recently. Islanders money line is my first pick. Second pick,
Love it.
Wild Stars under 6.5. The last 8 games for the Minnesota Wild have been well under the number. Ottinger is still a really good goaltender defensively. I know it hasn't been his best over the last little while. I feel the under in this game, under 6.5. I have faith in Philip Gustafson to do the job well. Utah, Detroit, over 5.5. Again, this is a game where both teams are fighting for their lives right now. They're going to be throwing everything at the net. Defensively, it might not be the most sound game like we just saw with Utah and Tampa Bay. 6-4 final for Utah in that one. That is my third pick of the night. Utah, Detroit, over 5.5. Lock of the night, though, is the Islanders on the money line.
Love the lock. Love the over. Let's have a big night. We had a pretty good week last week. Let's carry it into one of the final weeks of the NHL regular season.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod, making it your first listen every single day. For your second listen, go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Let's get after it. It's playoff time. From both Flip and I, we wish you good luck with the playoffs and your weekly matchups, those big time bets on Monday, and we shall see you all throughout this next week.
Peace.